There comes a moment, usually in the quiet of the night, long after the children have grown and the house has gone silent, when you realize that most of your life is behind you. And that's not a tragedy. It's a sacred thing. But with that realization comes something sharp, something almost painful. You begin to see with brutal clarity how much of your life was given away, how many pieces of your soul you handed out, hoping someone would hold them gently, and how often they didn't. In old age, it's not just the body that becomes fragile, it's the spirit. And there are things you carry in your heart now, memories and truths, scars and longings that were never meant to be shared casually. Because if you give them to the wrong person, you don't just lose trust, you lose yourself, protected, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, out of a hard-earned understanding that not everyone deserves access to your soul. I've spoken to hundreds of people, men and women, well into their twilight years, and again, I hear the same regret. I wish I hadn't told them that. And the truth is, what you share in your later years can either preserve your dignity or unravel it. It can either build legacy or sow confusion and pain. I knew a man, let's call him Arthur. He was 73, a retired teacher, a gentle soul with eyes that had seen too much. He lived alone in a modest house filled with books and old photographs. And Arthur had a tendency to talk too much. Not in a foolish way, no. In fact, he was quite brilliant. But he had never quite learned that some pain doesn't need to be witnessed. To be real, just to be real. He thought that sharing would lighten the burden, and in some cases it did. But one day he confided something deeply personal to a new acquaintance, someone who seemed kind, understanding, someone who listened. And weeks later, that same story, his private pain was used against him, twisted, mocked, whispered through their small town like gossip in a schoolyard. Arthur stopped going to the local cafe after that. He stopped smiling as much, and though he never said it, I could see it in him. A piece of him died that day. You must understand something profound here. People often assume that openness equals strength, and in some ways it does. Vulnerability is a gift when offered in the right context, but in old age it's no longer about proving how open you can be. It's about discerning who has earned the right to see the inner architecture of your being. There are 5 things, 5 deeply personal realms of your life that should remain sacred in your later years. And no, I'm not talking about hiding who you are. I'm talking about protecting the parts of you that took a lifetime to build. You don't need validation for your story anymore. You don't need permission to feel the things you feel. What you need is peace. And you get that by becoming a careful gatekeeper of your truth. The first is your deepest regrets, because regrets, you see, are not simple admissions of failure. They are emotional landmines. When you share them carelessly, you allow others to redefine your story, to label you, to diminish your complexity to a single moment of weakness. And let me tell you something about people. They are quick to remember your worst day and slow to recall your best. Arthur once told someone he regretted not standing up to his abusive father. And that became the only thing people saw in him after that, a man defined by a lack of courage. But what they didn't know was that he had spent a lifetime teaching young boys how to be brave, how to speak, how to carry themselves. That regret fueled a legacy. But he shared it, and they never saw him the same again. Don't make that mistake. Let your regrets teach you. Let them refine you. But don't hand them out like tokens. Second, never share the full depth of your financial situation. Whether you're wealthy or struggling, money has a way of distorting relationships. Once people know exactly what you have, you're no longer a person, you're a resource, especially in old age. I've seen families torn apart by inheritance disputes, friends turned into predators, trust destroyed by envy. You want to help others? Fine. Be generous. But don't open the books to everyone. You are not obligated to explain how you've survived, how you've saved, or what you plan to leave behind. That knowledge, when placed in the wrong hands, becomes a weapon. Third, your pain. Your pain. Yes, I know that's controversial. And I'm not saying suffer in silence. But hear me out. Not everyone who listens cares, and not everyone who cares deserves to know. Some people collect stories of pain not to empathize, but to control, to manipulate, to feed their sense of moral superiority. I once met a woman, Elaine, who shared the details of her grief after her son's suicide with a support group. And within months, one of the members began telling her story at events without her consent, turning her private sorrow into a public fable. Her pain became currency for someone else's status. That is a form of theft, and you must protect yourself from it. Fourth, your future plans, because in old age, your dreams become delicate things. They're no longer grand schemes. They're intimate hopes. Things like taking a trip, finishing a book, reconciling with an estranged child. And when you share those plans with people who lack imagination or compassion, they will mock them, dismiss them, drain them of meaning. I've seen older people abandon their final dream simply because someone scoffed at them. You're too old for that, they'd say. And the dream would die right there. Don't let anyone rob you of that last spark. Hold your future close. It still matters. And finally, never share your resentments. Bitterness is a fire, and when you speak it aloud, it grows. I've watched old men poison their remaining years by giving voice to every grudge, every slight. It consumes them. You might think that speaking your resentment will free you from it, but unless you're speaking to someone truly wise, someone who can hold it without judgment, without feeding it, it will only deepen the wound. Resentment is a demon that wants to live. Don't feed it with your voice. Instead, turn it into wisdom, into boundaries, into silence. That is strength. And you might ask, what then am I supposed to share? Share your love, share your curiosity, share your humor, your stories, your music, your photographs, your memories. Share the warmth that remains in you, because that is the part of you that gives others hope. But guard the rest, because you've earned the right to keep it. Old age is not a slow descent into irrelevance. It's a narrowing of focus, a sharpening, like a blade honed over years of use. You don't need the whole world to understand you. You need only a few good people, and even then, they don't need to know everything. Let them discover you in pieces. Let them earn that access. You are not a confession booth. You are a temple, and temples do not open their doors to everyone who passes by. So if you've reached that stage in life, if your hair is gray or your back aches a little more than it used to, understand this. Your power is not gone. It's just quieter now. But quieter doesn't mean weaker. In fact, the quiet power of a guarded soul is one of the most formidable forces in the world. It says, I know who I am. I know what I've survived. And I choose what I share, not because I'm hiding, but because I finally understand the value of my voice. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, if you've ever watched someone misuse something you told them in confidence, then you already know what I'm talking about. So let this video be your reminder, your anchor. That silence can be a form of wisdom, that you don't owe anyone the full story, and that what you choose to protect in your old age may just be what saves your soul. So now I ask you, what will you guard? What pieces of yourself have you been giving away too easily? Think about that, and if this spoke to you, share it. Not because I need the views, but because someone out there, someone with gray in their hair and pain in their heart, needs to be reminded that it's not too late to protect what's left. And if you're younger, if old age still feels far away, listen anyway. Because the habits you build now will define who you become. Don't wait until you've been broken to start protecting yourself. Start today and build a life that ends in dignity, not regret. Subscribe if you haven't already. We've got work to do.